So welcome everyone. Welcome to the final Metro Boston Consortium meeting. I'm Shirronda, Almeida, and I'm the chair of the Sustainable Communities Steering Committee. What an experience. We've had, 3.5 years, 66 municipalities participating, 170 organizations, 5,000 meetings. I'm making that up, but thanks to all of you, we've really made this a success. We brought people together across the region to work for a more sustainable, equitable, and just future for Massachusetts. This little $4 million grant from HUD led to these 60+ projects, and who knows the ripple effects that all these projects will have, right? Because this is the start, this is the planning, then there's the implementing, and then when one thing starts, kind of just like the seasons in New England, you are so glad for winter to end, some of us. But then spring starts. So although this is like a bittersweet point, I think it really sets us up for a really nice future because we have all of these connections. The $4 million grant also led to, as people saw these different projects that were listed around, and I hope people voted and really got a sense of the different types of projects that happened from, there was a food systems one. I worked on a regional equity project. There were advocacy campaigns, campaigns that really worked on educating and empowering and engaging people in the community, really taking an equity focus, really taking an initiative around this piece of engagement. What does it mean? And for me, I engaged in different ways. I started off as a steering committee member, and then I became the chair. So there was a leadership opportunity, which was very nice, but I also met a lot of folks throughout the MAPC area. I work at MACC, so I have a lot of CDC members that are here in the room, and they participated in a lot of the projects. And I know for me, it was really interesting to see that partnership and to see the different types of collaborations that happened and what people were really looking for and how they kind of came together, and warts and all, that's just part of the work, right? So I think what I'm taking away from this is just that this is a new beginning, and I'm trying to figure out the best way to keep in touch with all the folks that I've met now that we won't have our steering committee meeting anymore. So today is about where have we been? What are the impacts of our work? We'll start off with Amy Cotter, who will share some of those results, and then our keynote will be Secretary Donovan, and then Jim Canales, the newly named president of the Barr Foundation, has also joined us. He'll be saying a few words. Mark Draisen will finish us off towards the end. And then we will conclude, as I mentioned earlier, with a lovely networking and reception. And I'm really underlining that because sometimes people like to really work hard and they don't like to celebrate or appreciate, so just put that out there. But most importantly, this is the big part, all of the thank yous. Many people to thank for making this program a success. So what we're going to do here might be stepping out of your shell for some folks, but I'm going to ask people to stand and to remain standing as I read through, and I talk fast, so don't worry, I'll stay a long time. So I'm going to read through these list of folks that really helped make this happen. And I'd like to start off with the Sustainable Community Steering Committee leaders. My vice chair, Dana LeWinter. And so no clapping until the end, I'm sorry, I don't think I said that. Please remain standing. Dana LeWinter, previous chair, Bob Van Meter, and E.K. Singh, who was the previous vice chair. Members of the steering committee, come on, don't be shy, stand up. Our state and federal partners at HUD, EPA, DOT, EEOHIBG, I'm sorry, EEHED, EEA, and Mass. Especially Secretary Bialecki, who I was just speaking with. Please stand up and remain standing. This is where you get a little energy. You're not going to get the blood flowing, standing up. Funders that provided matching grants. The Barr Foundation, stand up. Hyams, Miller, the Boston Foundation. Elected officials, stand up if you are here. Project partners, this should make everybody stand up. Project partners, please stand up. Caucus members, consortium members, MAPC staff and officers, including project managers, the Sustainable Communities Management Team led by Amy Cotter, Mark Draisen, and Joe Barr. Let's give a round of applause. All of us. And I know for a fact more people could have stood up, so some shy people, but that's okay. That's all right. So now I'd like to just take a moment, because every once in a while you have to give a special shout out. I'd like to give a special shout out to Sheila Winter. Sheila handled all of the invoicing and sub-grantee agreements and mountains of paperwork. And we really appreciate you supporting us when we didn't feel that. So this room is filled with dynamic and idealistic people working together for a better region. I'm looking forward to, you should be looking forward to today. We'll have some great conversation, and I want to just thank you for all your work and commitment. And let's start off with Amy Cotter, who's going to talk about the impact. And Amy is the director of the Regional Plan for Implementation for MAPC.
Thank you, Shirronda. So Shirronda recognizes all of you who made the consortium what it was, and the partners and staff who poured their hearts and soul into this work. But I want to add my thanks to you and congratulate you for the culmination of all this work. As we look around the room, particularly with all those project posters, it's amazing what we've accomplished together. I'm just so proud to be part of this work. I want to echo my thanks to Sheila for her role. She has been so much more than a project accountant. She has been a friend and a confidant on many important things, and many unimportant things as well. My management team, Eric Hove, Mark Rassicott, Jenny Raid, Tim Reardon, and management team emeritus member Jessie Grogan, who has joined us. She's her new status, all but dissertation in her PhD program. So congratulations on to her. My bosses, Mark Draisen, Joelle Barrera, for taking many leaps of faith that were required as part of this program. And to Shirronda herself, thank you, Shirronda, for being such a great leader and a great collaborator. So together, this consortium, staff, and concerned residents across the region completed 60 projects and brought new relationships, energy, and change to the region. From Boston's neighborhoods to suburban locations, our work touched on all parts of the Metro Boston region. We used place-based projects, toolkits, policy change, dialogue and capacity building, data and analysis, and other approaches to move the region toward a more equitable, sustainable, and prosperous place. The consortium is made up of 170 diverse partners, people who represent municipalities, state agencies, advocacy groups, academic and business institutions, foundations, public housing authorities, and others. Now, many of these people had never met before, let alone worked together to discuss and address important issues that we're facing in this region. But together, in the last 3.5 years, they came together to innovate, to share best practices, and get those into the hands of people who are increasingly networked, changing decisions in our local places, in our regional institutions, and in the state. All of that happened through peer-to-peer learning, in consortium events, in workshops, and community meetings across the region. These consortium members pioneered new ways and an increasing emphasis on community engagement, pushing projects to reach beyond the usual suspects and to be as inclusive as possible. All told, across our projects, we translated or provided simultaneous interpretation into Arabic, Cantonese, Haitian Creole, Mandarin, Portuguese, Spanish, and Vietnamese. And I may actually be missing something there. We also engaged over 10,000 people in these projects. From Salem to Hingham to Marlborough, they also were far more representative of the people who actually call those places home than our typical planning project participants have been. And many of those people had never been asked their opinion about their future before. And people actually had fun. Many of the techniques that we used were not only educational, but were actually enjoyable for the participants of these projects. We used game-based play where you participated in an online gaming environment to plan, role play, and more informal dialogue that blended visioning and planning with socializing. The Metro Boston Consortium has truly helped set the stage for important change that can move this region forward, and some of it is already being realized. Let me give you a flavor. 16 Metro Boston Consortium municipalities work together in 4 clusters to identify biking and walking routes that connect transportation, recreation, job, and homes across municipal boundaries. Then they focused on easy places and easy ways to add those routes quickly and affordably. To date, 5 miles of bike lanes have already been added in 4 municipalities, and 137 more miles are on their way. New biking and walking connections are just some of the elements of the transportation system that we need in Metro Boston. And the Metro Boston Consortium, along with Transportation from Massachusetts and other allies, contributed mightily to this through recent efforts that raised $600 million on an annual average basis in new transportation funding for the Commonwealth. And while that's not all that we need, those resources are already beginning to translate into new investments, including new orange and red line cars, the new green line extending the silver line to Chelsea, expanding routes for regional transit authorities, and so on. At the same time, the Clean Energy Toolkit became a one-stop shop of strategies that advocates can use to pursue change in the municipal, residential, and commercial energy sectors. It has proven so popular that since being posted on our website in August, it has accounted for 56% of the traffic on the Clean Energy website. And it's no wonder. Cities like Saugus are using it, and in the support of MAPC staff, to help them move forward with solar installations, even as they lack the capacity and expertise in that arena. And still others have used it to support contracting and procurement of energy efficiency improvements, like the town of Arlington, which we featured in our winter council meeting. They are already saving $145,000 on an annual basis because they switched to using LED streetlights. The Metro Boston Sustainable Communities Consortium also engaged consortium members in 34 municipalities to identify local, regional, and state priorities for development and preservation. Focusing land use planning and infrastructure investments accordingly can help us to maximize the benefits of growth and development while ensuring that it is sustainable over the long run. The work brought the total number of state-endorsed priority areas for development in the Metro Boston region to a total of 19. And the number of state-endorsed priorities for preservation to 112. And in just the last year, Secretary Bialecki led the Commonwealth to invest more than $14 million of the MassWorks infrastructure grant money across all of those areas. And $6 million of that went to projects that directly evolved from the Sustainable Communities Planning projects, including one that will finally help to reconnect Malden Square with its T-station and foster its revitalization. Now that's just one station area that could become a good candidate for Boston Lisk's multi-million-dollar equitable TOD accelerator fund, which was designed to help fill gaps in the financing available for transit-oriented development in the region. Next month, that fund will go into the business of making new homes, making good homes, and better jobs for families and communities. The accelerator had key early support from Secretary Bialecki's office through a $1 million MassWorks grant, and investments from the Barr, Boston, Himes, and Osprey Foundations, as well as from Lisk itself. I'm really proud that Sustainable Communities helped to finalize the design of this fund and secure some of the funding. And I'd really like to recognize Bob Van Meter from Lisk, Secretary Bialecki and their staffs, particularly Kristen Blum, Victoria McGuire, representatives of all the participating foundations, and MAPC's own Jenny Ray. Could we give them a hand? We also use the Sustainable Communities program to develop new techniques for anticipating the risk of displacement that existing residents can face in stronger real estate markets like the one Greater Boston has right now, and when new transit brings a transportation amenity and new investment to the neighborhood. Piloted with the City of Somerville and the Somerville Community Corporation, and now folded into a broader toolkit, we think that this approach will allow community leaders to identify and invest in the most promising strategies for managing neighborhood change in a way that welcomes newcomers while benefiting the people who stuck it out during the bad times and helped to create the good times. The region's first climate change adaptation plan will help us to reduce vulnerability from the anticipated impacts of climate change. And not just in coastal areas where sea level rise is a flooding risk, but also in under-resourced inland areas where phenomena like temperature increase and heat island effect put particularly vulnerable populations at risk. As with many of the 60 Sustainable Communities projects, we already are following up on this. We're bringing together the metro mayors, and other coastal leaders for the first regional summit on these issues in the near future. The Institute for Leadership in Equity and Development, or ILEAD, was designed by partners Action for Regional Equity, the Bill King Institute, and MAPC to help people who don't typically get engaged become more comfortable and effective participating in the decision-making processes that affect their lives. 5 workshops, conducted with additional support from the Miller Foundation, have trained 155 people in the how and why of neighborhood planning. In the day-long Quincy ILEAD workshop, participants reflected the diversity of the city, and especially its Asian population. They weren't the current leaders of the community, and for many, it was their first community meeting. At the workshop, an older Filipino gentleman met people from the Asian Community Development Corporation, which is an organization that has a historic base in Boston Chinatown neighborhood, but increasingly works with the burgeoning Asian population in Quincy. Before you knew it, our fresh trainee had gone from his first community meeting in Quincy to his first State House visit, talking with his legislators about the importance of community development as part of the Mass Association of CDC's annual Lobby Day. And at virtually the same time, a young woman who participated in the same ILEAD workshop decided to attend a forum that was offered as part of this program's Regional Analysis of Impediments to Fair Housing project with the South Shore Home Consortium. But she went further, bringing with her a van load of recent immigrants who were studying English. Yes, it was a good opportunity for them to practice their language skills and to experience community deliberation in their adopted country. But she also brought them because she had come to understand the importance of their perspective to the fair housing discussion at hand. In the What's Next for Downtown Lynn project, we engaged residents, business owners, and organizations in exploring ideas and actions to build on the vision of a prosperous and diverse downtown Lynn. Fueled by local Dominican food and cupcakes, participants were invited to share their experiences and opinions, and in Spanish or English, and they had interpreters that helped everyone be a part of the conversation. As they got to know each other and information about Lynn, common themes emerged. Pride in downtown Lynn, and a lot of excitement about its potential, but also impatience with the pace of change. A quote, "This area is awesome, yet we have this issue that people don't go downtown." Well, the work of those people is now being rewarded by zoning changes and renewed attention to a central business district that we hope will boost its amenities and its walkability, increase the opportunity for new businesses and jobs, homes and residents, draw attention to it as a destination for arts, culture, and dining, and promote community stewardship to strengthen and respond to the constituency that is so eager for change. I could go on. These are just a few examples of the many ways in which the projects funded by the Sustainable Communities Regional Planning Grant and executed by members of the Metro Boston Sustainable Communities Consortium are having an impact in the lives of people who live and work in the region. Many more projects and their impacts, including those that focus on indicators of the region's progress, preserving our agricultural heritage and enhancing our food security, as well as the ongoing need for policy change like zoning reform in the Commonwealth. All of those and more are discussed in the posters, the displays that you may have browsed before our formal program began, but you'll have another chance after the formal program, and I really encourage you to go talk to folks who participated in developing those projects. They have a lot of pride and excitement in talking about their work, and I'd love to hear from you about yours. From my perspective, all of this has provided a tremendous boost to the realization of our regional plan, Metro Future. Metro Future was built with broad participation and adopted in December 2008 by MAPC as its official roadmap to 2030. It was and remains bold but achievable. It aspires to be a more sustainable, equitable, and prosperous Metro Boston. Its 6 main goals bear a striking resemblance to the federal livability principles that are the underpinning for the opportunity we're celebrating today. And for that, I would like to offer my thanks to Secretary Donovan and to his team, without whom I know we would not have had that opportunity. Mr. Secretary, we're so pleased that you're with us today, and we're so grateful for your leadership on all of these issues that affect Metro Boston. With that, I'll hand it back to Shirronda to introduce our keynote speaker.
Thank you so much, Amy. She's a hard worker, this one. Let's give another round of applause. So now we're going to transition a little to our keynote speaker, U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development Secretary, the 15th Secretary, Shaun, Donovan. There's a full description in the program, so I'm not going to read through all of that, but I have to say I went to the website where there's even a longer description of all his accomplishments. And the thing that that stuck out in my mind the most was the fact that I believe you went to Harvard and wrote a report or something like that. So we share the same alma mater. Different schools, but I was like, that's what I remember. So I can tell you must have some roots here in Boston. So we're really pleased to have you join us today, Mr. Secretary. And I look forward to hearing your words.
Check the iPhone. Let's see what was on there. Shirronda, thank you for the brief but special introduction. I really appreciate it. More importantly, thank you for all your leadership, the work that you do every day. You've been an amazing chair in the steering committee, and so thank you. I also want to say thank you to my fellow secretary, who is here, has been such a leader on these issues. I really appreciate your leadership, the governor's leadership in so many ways on this, so thank you as well. To your president, Michelle Sokola, who I understand in her tenure will be coming to an end soon. Let's give her a round of applause. And also, I must give a shout out to Mark Draisen, and also to Amy Cotter for all the great work that you have done. So, thank you. I do want to recognize my great regional director, someone who has been working on these issues for her entire career at LISC and many other places, but we are so lucky to have her at HUD, Barbara Fields, and the entire team here in the region that have done just a great job. Congratulate Jim Canales, who has recently become the president of the Barr Foundation. I wish you all the luck, Jim. You've got a very bold vision. I know that from everyone who's worked with you, and so good luck, and anything we can do to be helpful on that vision, we'd love to. So, good luck. Last but not least, I want to say thank you, to offer my deep appreciation to every one of you that is here today that has worked with the consortium. You have done enormously important and even remarkable work, but you've done it at a time where it could not be more important to our nation's history. Helping communities meet the challenges of today while shaping a better tomorrow is a challenge that all of us must rise to. We are, all of us at HUD, very proud to call you partners, and I am thrilled, even though I've got a lot going on these days, particularly a lot in the last few days. I could not miss a special opportunity to come up and spend time with you at the special event today. And I am, as was mentioned just a moment ago, Shirronda said that I do have some local connections here. I will admit that I spent 9 years at Harvard, got my undergraduate and then 2 graduate degrees, but perhaps even more importantly, my mom and my dad met at MIT. So I often say I owe my academic life to Harvard, but I owe my actual life to MIT. So thank you to Boston. It's also, it's very fitting that we're celebrating here at the Omni Parker House. And as I think you all know, there is a lot of history in this place where we gather today. From what I understand, every president since Grant has visited here over the years. And think of the incredible range of leaders who have gathered from all sectors in this place as well to talk about the greatest challenges of our times. From the Great Depression to World War II, to the energy crisis of the 70s, to the stock market crash in 1987. And when the Partnership for Sustainable Communities was born in 2009, our nation was once again facing one of our great tests, an historic economic crisis. Really, the greatest economic crisis any of us have seen in our lifetimes. Consider just a few of the dire headlines from the Boston Globe from 2009. Mortgage meltdown. 0, the number of IPOs in Massachusetts for all of 2008. The 5 stages of business decline. Struggling to make ends meet, adults move back in with their folks. Ailing economy is making people sicker, doctors see rise in stress. I could go on, but the point is clear. The crisis impacted every aspect of life in the Boston region and across the nation. And as leaders in the region, you saw the incredible pain, anxiety, and fear that gripped families at the time who were fighting off foreclosure, losing their retirement savings, closing the doors on their businesses, and so many more painful circumstances. Even worse, the economic crisis widened an opportunity gap that was decades in the making. For many years, we've seen a growing disparity between productivity and pay, the middle class being increasingly squeezed, and I think this is one of the things that too often is missed about the foreclosure crisis that we saw. The run-up to the foreclosure crisis, the so-called drive to qualify phenomenon, where families were increasingly having to move farther and farther away from their jobs to find affordable housing, was driving up transportation costs to a level where, in 2009, Americans were spending 52 cents of every dollar they earned just on housing and transportation. Those two needs. And in many, many places around the country, transportation is actually now more expensive than housing. It's a remarkable change and a remarkable part of what has squeezed the middle class increasingly over the years. But we also see growing barriers that are stifling upward mobility and trapping our children in poverty as well. And let's be absolutely clear here today. It is simply wrong that you can put a child's address into Google Maps and more often than not, tell them what their future will look like. Zip codes shouldn't determine a child's future. Their talent and their work ethic should. To give them that chance, it clearly wasn't enough to rebuild communities back to the way things were before the Great Recession. Instead, we had to rebuild them stronger and smarter so they could withstand future challenges. We had to connect families to opportunity by developing affordable housing, surrounding that housing with jobs, giving people the transportation options they needed to get to those jobs, and creating a healthy environment so that they don't have to miss work or school because they get sick. And so many more elements that are part of what you gathered to talk about today. So recognizing this, I was proud to join with then EPA Administrator Lisa Jackson and then Secretary of Transportation Ray LaHood to form the Partnership for Sustainable Communities. This collaboration represents a new approach in the way the federal government does business. Too often in the past, the federal government would address problems in isolation. HUD would work on housing, DOT on transportation, EPA on the environment, and so on. Recognizing that all these issues are connected, the Obama administration has worked tirelessly to break down the artificial barriers that prevented collaboration among federal agencies. We've also worked to break the barriers that have prevented the federal government from working with local leaders like you. Too often in the past, either because of ignorance or arrogance, the federal government ignored local leaders. The federal government ignored your experiences, your expertise, your ideas. And that's simply not a smart approach to community development. That's why this administration made it a point to extend our hand to local leaders rather than turn our backs. Why? Because our nation needs you. We need your bold visions for the future. We need your out-of-the-box thinking. We need your knowledge of both the opportunities and the challenges facing your neighborhoods, your cities, your regions. That's why we've been proud to work with local leaders in a variety of ways, including at the neighborhood level with efforts like Choice Neighborhoods and Promise Zones, and at the city level with our Strong Cities, Strong Communities initiative. But we also realized that a regional effort was needed because, as President Obama has said, Our urban and rural communities are not independent, they are interdependent. And during one of our nation's most trying periods, when we needed people to step up and drive this regional development, leaders like you answered the call for action. The 143 planning grants that the partnership awarded are touching and improving the lives of over 40% of the US population in a number of profound and innovative ways. From creating new job opportunities, to aligning workforce development with regional planning, to deepening engagement between stakeholders, particularly with underrepresented groups. We're seeing dramatic progress among partnerships taking place across the country. And in particular, I want to thank each and every one of you for your great work on this front. Amy just spoke eloquently about all your outstanding accomplishments, and I want to quickly offer my congratulations to hers. Metro Future is just the kind of work we wanted to support when we formed the partnership, and we wanted to support with real funding to power that work. From day one, MAPC and its partners have paved a path forward that allows planning to translate into action on the ground. Starting with the innovative governance structure for the project, your commitment to getting financial and technical resources to those who need it in real time has been remarkable. You've designed a framework that brings together 4 types of communities, meets their different needs, but does so in an interconnected way that advances common goals. You also set the standard for our Category 2 funds to support regions that had already made a commitment to integrated regional planning, and were looking to us for ways to take the next step and further refine your plans. Finally, I want to commend you for being bold in taking on the issues of economic and social equity. Efforts like the research in your Fair Housing Equity Assessment have helped move the regional dialogue forward in a permanent and promising way. You've correctly recognized that the only way for our nation to achieve its full promise is to give every American a fair shot at success. So more than anything else, I'm here today to say thank you. Thank you for being incredible champions of change. Thank you for taking a leadership role in strengthening this region for generations to come. And thank you for fulfilling our greatest hopes for the Partnership for Sustainable Communities. I'm honored to be with you to mark the end of this exciting chapter, but every end leads to a new beginning. And I'm sure many of you are wondering what's next for this effort after the end of funding for your regional planning. First, let me assure you that HUD is firmly committed to your work. That is why we continue to fight for additional funding. In the fiscal year 2015 budget, through the President's Opportunity Growth and Security Initiative, he's proposed $75 million for integrated planning investment grants to support the partnership. It's critically important that we get this done, and so I ask that you make your voices heard. This region deserves this support. The other 139 regions and communities deserve this support. And so do families across the country. We've still got 60% of the American population to reach. So let's work together to get funding for these important efforts. And as that debate continues, know that this administration isn't just sitting around. We're doing everything we can to keep your momentum going. You'll remember that in fiscal year 2010, we created a preferred sustainability status, giving projects and services like yours a competitive advantage in most of our discretionary grant programs, such as Choice Neighborhoods. And as I announced this past December, grantees can keep their PSS status for 3 years after the close of their grants. This means you'll continue to have HUD resources available to you as you implement your projects. This complements the changes that all 3 agencies in the partnership have made last year to give you an improved competitive position. In short, we're doing everything we can to help you continue to build an economically and environmentally resilient future. And as we look ahead, I ask all of you to take leadership roles in addressing 2 of our nation's most pressing challenges. One is the need for affordable housing. As we all know, people are the most important assets to any region's growth, and to thrive, they need access to quality, affordable housing. Unfortunately, in recent years, it's been getting increasingly difficult for Americans to secure this opportunity. In fact, we're in the midst of the worst rental affordability crisis that this country has ever known. According to the Joint Center for Housing Studies, in 2012, roughly half of all renters paid at least 30 cents of every dollar they earned on housing, representing the greatest number of housing cost burden renters on record. Specific to this area, I know you released your own study earlier this year showing that we need more housing at all price points in all communities to fuel future growth in Greater Boston. And it's clear we need to act boldly to meet this challenge. HUD has worked in a variety of ways to address it, including reforms to our multifamily office that make it easier for our partners to do business, has greatly increased the new housing construction that we're supporting through tax credits and other efforts, and our rental assistance demonstration effort that's preserving our critical public housing units around the country. Now we've got to go even further by pushing for housing finance reform. As many of you know, last week, the Senate Banking Committee passed legislation with a bipartisan vote that would, among other things, dedicate $5 billion a year on average for the production of affordable housing. This is an unprecedented chance to bring new resources to this cause. In fact, it really is a once-in-a-generation opportunity at a time when budget pressures have been tremendous. Families deserve a chance to find and keep decent affordable housing. Let's give them that chance by making our voices heard to ensure that housing finance reform reaches the finish line. The second priority I want to highlight today is preparing our communities for the extreme weather caused by climate change. Make no mistake, climate change is here and it is real. Earlier this month, the President released the National Climate Assessment, which outlined the great risks facing our nation. Specifically for the Northeast, it outlined how the 64 million people living in this region are being impacted by storm surges, heat waves, rising sea levels, and more. Now, I have experienced this dramatically and personally when my hometown, New York City, was hit by Hurricane Sandy. In my mind, there's no question that these kind of storms will hit our region again. It's not a matter of if, but when. To meet this challenge, the President's responded with bold action. Last June, he released his Climate Action Plan, the most aggressive initiative ever undertaken by a U.S. President to address climate change. A core goal of the plan is to prepare communities for future storms by making resiliency a priority in all future building. This means putting science at the heart of planning, something we did as part of the Hurricane Sandy task force that I chaired. We developed a sea level rise tool that allows local leaders, residents of a community, planners, anyone else, to see projections, just to click on a map on the web, even down to the building level, to see projections of rising sea levels as far as 100 years into the future. We also ensured that every project funded by the Sandy supplemental dollars take into account these future flood risks, an approach that the President is now making national. And we've also stressed the importance of regional coordination, because if during a storm, one city prevents flooding, that water will move potentially to the neighboring town and devastate it instead. This is a point that hit me very profoundly in the first meeting I ever had when I started to chair the Sandy Task Force with all the major infrastructure agencies in the Sandy-affected region. We were meeting to talk about how we could make the transportation systems more resilient. And there have been lots of news coverage in the New York Times and elsewhere in the region of innovative ways to stop the flooding of the subway tunnels and other tunnels that have been such a profound impact with Sandy. These inflatable plugs and doors that can come down and things. And we were having a conversation about these. The guy from Amtrak said, you know what? We had one of those doors that we could have closed on the Hudson River Tunnel. But if we had, all of Penn Station would have flooded. And that led the head of the Port Authority at the time to say, well, you know what? If the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel hadn't flooded in lower Manhattan, the East River might have met the Hudson across Canal Street. Now, I'm not sure the science on that is exactly right, but you get the point. that we can't think about the way we protect our infrastructure, our homes, our communities as individuals. We must create regional responses, regional coordination, so that during a storm, cities, communities, families are working together. That is exactly what we've done by convening a regional coordination process in the Sandy affected region. And I ask you to do exactly the same thing here, to take the lead in helping this region build a more resilient future. In turn, I ask you to tell us at HUD how we can do better. How can we better serve you? How can we be more efficient and effective? We want to hear it all and look forward to the consortium guiding our future efforts in this area. That's because we deeply and truly value you, your ideas, your work. Back in 2009, when the president was talking about this work, he quoted Daniel Burnham when he said, "Make no little plans." All of you bring these words to life by taking on the big challenges of our day. An historic economic crisis, the widening opportunity gap, climate change, and so much more. We've been proud to work with you every step of the way. And the entire Partnership for Sustainable Communities, including Secretary Fox and Administrator McCarthy, wants to continue to support you and your work. Together, we can maximize the potential of this region. Together, we can give families from all backgrounds the assets that they need to thrive. Together, we can help build not just a stronger region, but a stronger nation. I know these goals are ambitious. We have set our sights high, but working in partnership, I know we can reach them. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Secretary. I can totally relate to those values. I do want to take a moment, because this is a day of appreciating and thanking, but I did want to thank Mary Beth Mello, from Regional Administrator at the FTA, and thank you so much for being a great partner. So continuing on, Jim Canales is, I think, what is this, day 8 of the Barr Foundation? So we're getting him early and fresh. And he's, apparently he's been here for a little while, so he hasn't been in the state for just 8 days, but he's coming from San Francisco and after running the James Irvine Foundation. So we're happy to welcome you here to the Commonwealth, Mr. Canales.
Thank you very much. Thanks for that kind introduction. And again, I also want to congratulate everyone in the room on the terrific work that has been done. It was great to have a chance to read many of the posters and see many of the projects profiled on the website. It's some tremendous work, and I join everyone in offering my congratulations as well. It's a pleasure to be with you today, and also to have the opportunity to follow Secretary Donovan, who, in his leadership of HUD, has modeled the very collaborative and partnership-oriented style that I think ensures that we're investing our resources in the most effective ways. So I'm delighted that he was able to be here with us today as part of this celebration. Today does indeed mark my 8th day as president of the Barr Foundation, so I don't come to you today with a grand plan for Barr's future. Indeed, the principal reason that I was delighted to have Mark's invitation was the chance to be with you all today, to listen, to engage, and to learn from all of you, which is indeed the way I see the early months of my tenure at Barr unfolding. Far too often in the field of philanthropy, a field that I've been involved with for a couple of decades, with leadership change comes very rapid programmatic change. And it often does not do justice to the hard work that's been done by many leaders over many years. So I pledge to you today that Barr is going to be thoughtful, transparent, and very open about our plans as we enter a period of reflection, as we take stock about our existing work, as we identify those ways that Barr can make a difference, and as we continue to move forward on very ambitious goals that we've been going at for many years. I know that in partnership with all of you, we'll find the right path for the future. As I've been getting to know the Barr Foundation and my colleagues over the last number of weeks, what very quickly rises to the surface are the names of those trusted partners, those that we have come to rely upon to create the change that we seek. And so I heard very early in my onboarding process about the work of the Metropolitan Area Planning Council and the effective work that all of you do throughout this entire region, and today has only reinforced the progress that has been made. In the planning and development space, as a transplant from California, I am new to the concept of home rule that you have in Massachusetts. And as I'm learning about it, I'm struck by both the opportunity and the challenge that it offers. On the opportunity side, it gives every town and municipality the ability to directly shape its future. And on the challenge side, if every town goes off and does its own thing without coordination and consideration of the effects upon others, conflicts can and do emerge. In California, where I have worked for the past 25 years, I have seen how an effective and coordinated approach to regional planning can effectively balance local needs within a larger context, so that the whole can be more than the sum of the parts, and very importantly, so that as many people as possible can prosper. That is what MAPC and the work of the Sustainable Communities Consortium has been about. MAPC meets every community where they are and brings the skills and tools and networks to help them see where their place is and the value they can derive from taking this regional approach. As I've learned more about the work that you have done and listened to the conversation today, I can't help but be struck by three characteristics of the approach that you have taken that I believe will become increasingly important to drive the kind of change that we seek collectively. Some of you may know that I began my career as an English teacher, so I'm a big fan of alliteration. So if you'll permit me to use that device, let's talk about 3 C's: cross-sector collaboration, capacity building, and community engagement. Permit me to take a moment on each. Cross-sector collaboration. You heard Secretary Donovan speak to the collaborative interagency work that he has done with EPA and with the Department of Transportation. Much of the work that you have spoken of and have done in your communities underscores the necessity to get out of our silos, to reach across sectors, to reach across fields of work in order to create the change that we seek. In our work at Barr, we are now part of a new multi-sector collaborative across the country that's bringing together many private foundations, including the Irvine Foundation, where I used to work, and the National Endowment for the Arts, around the concept of creative placemaking. All of these examples speak to the importance of our reaching across the boundaries that so often define us and often limit our ability to create the change that we are looking to see, that we see. Second, capacity building is critical. As you know from one of your own projects, the Immigrant Learning Center in Lynn, which is building capacity for immigrant businesses to engage in renewal in neighborhoods and the downtown region. This capacity building work is critical foundational work, and yet too often, particularly in philanthropy, we underestimate its cost or its necessity. I admire how much of your work has realized the value and importance of capacity building, and I assure you that it will be a core part of Barr's work as we seek to create lasting, durable change. And finally, we cannot underestimate the importance and the power and even need of citizen engagement. Through your work, you have successfully engaged more than 10,000 residents in various projects, including master planning in towns like Hingham and Everett, or the feasibility study of the Millis Town Center. This work, giving voice and providing agency to the very people affected by our planning decisions, is fundamental. And it's not just because the outcome is more authentically connected to the needs of the people we seek to serve, but it's also because of the empowerment and the engagement it provides for citizens of all backgrounds, something that is so vital to a well-functioning democracy. It's clear to me that these elements of cross-sector collaboration, capacity building, and citizen engagement have been at the core of your work. And I hope that the rest of us can learn from your example. In fact, I would contend that the change you have all unleashed has such great potential today precisely because of your commitment to these concepts. So I too offer my thanks for the terrific work you have done. I look forward to learning more from each of you in the months and years ahead. And I thank you for the very kind invitation to be with you today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim. That was great. So now, coming to our fearless leader, Mark Draisen, Executive Director of MAPC. He is multi-talented, and I'll bring that up a little later when we have some surprises for the winners of the posters. But I would just like to acknowledge Mark's leadership, and it's just been great being part of this team and getting to know more about MAPC. And I was proud to be the chair of the organization. So, Mark.
Shirronda, thank you. Thanks to all of you. Thanks to Secretary Donovan, Secretary Bialecki, Jim Canales, my own leaders at MAPC, Michelle Sicolo, Lynn Duncan, who couldn't be here today, the other officers, and the leadership of the Consortium, Bob and EK and Shirronda and Dana, all of whom have served as very active chairs and vice chairs throughout the past 3 years. 3 years for me has moved very quickly. One of the reasons it's worked quickly is because I had the pleasure of working with another wonderful leader who has seen this project through from its inception to the real design, which came after we got the money, the fundraising, because $4 million wasn't enough. We needed to bring the additional foundation partners on board, all of whom have been wonderful partners in ways that far exceeded the money itself, and then the implementation of our 60 projects in policy, in local planning, in developing best practices, in engaging the public in new and multifaceted ways. Everyone in this room has contributed in one way or another to that accomplishment, but nobody has contributed more than my Director of Regional Plan Implementation, Amy Cotter. And I'd like to ask Amy to come back up here. So, one of the things at MAPC is we have no power or authority at all. I think most people know that. Anything that we accomplish by encouraging people to adopt the ideas that we put forward or to engage in a discussion that results in action. It is all through education. That makes this problem and this project, and it makes Amy's work as the chief steward, the steward-in-chief of the regional plan, to be more challenging. Another challenge is that at MAPC, not all of us works for Amy. She has a staff, what is it, about 4 or 5, I think, is that right? 4 people. But everyone at the agency, all 80 of us, are implementing the regional plan. And so it is a challenge for Amy to sort of herd everyone together, listen to difficulties and problems, try and find common solutions, and always, to quote Jim, work and think outside of the silos. Not everybody knows this, although our friends at Barr know this because it's been written into so many of their grants to us over the course of the last 15 years. Metro Future is not only about transforming the region, although that's its most important goal. Metro Future also has the goal of transforming the regional planning agency. And I don't think that anyone has contributed to more to that transformation internally or regionally than Amy has. So I've gotten her we have gotten her a very small token of our appreciation, which is a book called Eden in America, which some of you may be familiar with, about some of the seminal ways in which Boston led the country and in some ways led the world in the transformation of urban spaces, as a very small token of our appreciation for her work, both past and future, Amy. Thank you, Amy, and thank you all. So I've been giving a little thought to what to say about the future, since we've spent a fair amount of time talking about what we've actually done over the course of the last 3 years. I know it will come as a surprise to you to hear that Metro Future has not yet been fully implemented. We have made important strides, tremendous accomplishment, changes in the way people act, changes in the way people think, changes in the way people spend their money, changes in the way land is developed, or in some cases is not developed, if that's the best outcome. But we have a long way to go, and thankfully, 16 more years to get there. Not all with me, I'm going to say, but it is a transformational effort. That's the whole point. And I wanted to speak today a little bit about some of the ongoing priorities that we are going to have close to our hearts and in our heads as we work beyond this grant to try and move forward to the implementation of Metro Future throughout the region. One of those standards that we're going to hold high is that problems are often regional and solutions are almost always regional. As a former elected official in this region, I understand the value of home rule. I actually think that it does vet certain issues and problems and bring them to the fore early on in ways that are useful, because they're going to come up anyway and they could kick you down the road. So better to know them at the beginning and sort things out in the places where people live. But at the same time, it's an increasingly interdependent region and an increasingly interdependent world. There's no way we can develop 400,000 units of housing to provide good homes and fuel our economy one community at a time. There's no way we can deal with critical issues in the air and in the water and issues of climate change one community at a time, because those forces neither know nor care where the municipal boundaries are. We have to get people talking across those boundaries, discussing their problems openly, surfacing differences, and then more often than not, surfacing similarities in areas of agreement that can serve as a prelude to action. I'll call on one example here, not so much from the land use side of MAPC, but from that other very important half of the agency, which is about municipal governance, what we call our municipal collaboration department. We have witnessed all over America incredible fights between the right and the left, sometimes between different parties, often between labor and management, knockdown, drag-out fights over some of the issues of municipal benefits to employees. We've seen in Florida, we've seen in Wisconsin, we've seen in other states, tremendous difficulty at being able to resolve some of those difficult issues and actually derive accord among people, because folks were so focused on getting advantage over one another. MAPC are partners on the municipal side, in labor, in the Patrick administration, in the legislature, in the foundation world. Boston Foundation was particularly active in this arena. Said we have a really difficult challenge in terms of municipal health insurance for employees, costing a huge amount of money, in many cases absorbing all of the annual increases under Proposition 2.5, yet the solution must involve good health insurance for employees and their families. So we're going to work together to figure out that plan. A A lot of the elements of that plan were quietly written and rewritten in the offices of MAPC. And then eventually, first one reform and then a second reform were passed, which have saved tens of millions of dollars in the municipal budgets so far, and which today provide very good health insurance to all municipal employees. So it is possible to achieve those agreements if you work at them hard and if you work at them long enough. Another critical factor, the critical standard that I feel we have to hold up, that I think at MAPC we really discovered through the Sustainable Communities program, is the absolutely essential role of civic engagement in the planning process. It is relatively easy, to be honest, for the technical experts among planners and a small cadre of elected officials in the State House, City Hall, or Town Hall to sit down, discuss a problem, and come up with a solution. And I would say 3/4 of the time they may come up with a good solution. But 1/4 of the time, maybe more, they will have really missed some very important points. And here's the even more important point in my opinion. Sometimes they won't even actually be talking about the most important problem. Because, again, I draw on my experience in the legislature for a lot of this. It's the people who set the agenda that often have more power than the people who decide how individual problems are eventually disposed. We have committed at MAPC with our consortium partners and under the eagle eye of the members of our consortium. Sometimes, I'll be honest, few of us at MAPC may have backed off on it a little bit, but folks in the consortium kept us true to the notion that money and resources and attention and time needed to be focused on civic engagement. And it couldn't all be expended just doing better outreach for meetings at 3 in the afternoon. Then we needed innovative ways to engage people, ways to go to where they were to talk to them, ways to talk to them in their languages, ways to make sure that young people and seniors were involved in the process. And we developed a whole new capacity. I'm looking at Emily Torres-Cullinan, and I think Renato Castillo is here as well. Renato, are you here in the room? Yes, in the back. Who are our 2 community organizers and community engagement specialists at MAPC. You know, regional planning agencies don't hire organizers for the most part. They rarely hire people who focus on civic engagement. But we made that commitment through Sustainable Communities, and we are going to do our best to keep it going in the future. A third standard that I want to talk about is the issue of equity as a paramount objective of MAPC, of Metro Future, and of our individual projects and objectives. This cannot be a successful region if it is not a region where the burdens of development and the benefits of growth are equitably distributed across municipalities, across races, across income groups, across people of varying physical abilities, and we are committed as a consortium, as a planning agency, as a movement, and I hope as a region, to understand the equity impacts of all of our projects and all of the policies we advocate, and to make our choices of that agenda again, our choices of those priorities, based on what is going to move the needle on issues like hunger, and issues of residential segregation, and issues of displacement and gentrification, and issues of educational inequality, and issues of the impacts of climate change on low-income households, issues of fair housing, and all of the other issues that honestly folks often just don't like to talk about. We need to continue to talk about them in our future work. Another standard that I would like to raise for all of you to think about is around the issue which I consider to be probably the seminal issue of our time, and that is the issue of climate change. Often there is a debate about whether or not we need to focus on GHG reduction, on climate change, or climate adaptation. I feel very strongly, and MAPC as an agency feels very strongly, that we no longer have the luxury of picking one or the other, and we certainly don't have the time to fight between each other about that question. We need to do both. It's essential that we do both. This involves education. It involves collaboration. It involves commitment. It often involves swimming against the tide. You know, we are working very closely with a number of our communities on dealing with the new flood maps and the insurance impacts of those maps, et cetera, et cetera. It's important work. But you can't participate in that discussion without realizing a couple of things. First of all, the maps may or may not be exactly right. The insurance rates may or may not be exactly right. It's important to try and get them right. But in the long term, it's coming. And long ain't as long as it was 5 years ago or 10 years ago. So we need to recognize those realities, do everything we can to roll them back and prepare for what's coming day by day, not to be in any status of denial about that. The second lesson that I think is really critical for us to understand is that the impacts of climate change do not happen only along the coasts. They happen in our farms. We have to take them into account as MAPC and our partners throughout the state develop a food systems plan for and with the Commonwealth over the course of the next 18 months. They happen on the top floor of unair-conditioned public housing developments. They happen along our rivers that become increasingly invaded by the sea, and where flooding occurs as well. And there's another way in which the effects of climate change happen that relate very much to this whole issue of insurance, which is we don't only see more flooding, we don't only see disastrous storms along the coastline, we see the tornadoes and the mudslides and the forest fires and all of the other impacts of climate change throughout the country. I don't know why we can't just say to each other as a country, well, we all need some insurance to deal with it. Why don't we all put something into the kitty and help all of ourselves out? It shouldn't be the coastal states versus the mountain states or anything like that. We all have to deal with and address this issue. And we can do our small part by making sure that this issue is front and center in our individual planning projects. The last thing I'd like to close on, and then have a few small comments after that about some steps we're taking at MAPC. The last kind of big standard I'd like to speak about is the following. Metro Future is a regional plan. We firmly believe that most of Metro Future will be implemented through local action. Projects in individual cities, in individual towns, and in individual neighborhoods. Sometimes people say to us, well, why are you doing that project in Saugus, or that project in Millis, or that project in Dorchester? What does it really have to do with the regional plan? And sometimes we get asked at our iLead forums and training sessions that Amy referred to, well, you know, I got a whole heck of a lot of things that I have to deal with in Roxbury. Right now, I do not see why I need to be concerned about what's happening in Lexington or Gloucester. But the reason is that all of these local projects have region-wide impacts. And doing nothing on the local level often has the biggest negative regional impacts of all. So we are proud that 3/4 of our work, give or take, like the secretary, I don't really know if that's a scientific number or not, but let's say 3/4 of our work is locally working in cities and towns and neighborhoods. But we also believe there's another side to that coin. It's in those cities, towns, and neighborhoods that we learn the policy issues, which we then need to bring up to the State House. The executive branch, the legislative branch, and by the way, the folks in Washington as well. If we develop those policy objectives through our local work, we'll not only have the right agenda for policy change, we will also have thousands of people behind us to make that change actually happen. So we are going to take a few steps at MAPC to try and make sure that our sustainable communities work, the lessons we learned and the work we have yet to do, can proceed robustly according to those standards that I've laid out and others I don't have time for today. One of those steps we are going to take is we are going to continue to support and staff at least 2, and I hope eventually more, of the caucuses, both the topical caucuses and the community-type caucuses that were established under sustainable communities. We don't have all the funding from sustainable communities anymore, but a number of the caucuses were very robust and active. The Fair Housing Caucus, for example, is one of those I know would like to continue, and we are going to make sure that happens, hopefully with other resources that we have. Another thing that we're going to do is we're going to use the statute that created MAPC, Section 24, Chapter 40B, I believe. Just my luck to be in Chapter 40B. But anyway, in any event, to try and see if some of our consortium leaders, even if the consortium is no longer as a steering committee, can become members of the MAPC Council and maybe eventually the MAPC Executive Committee by asking people if they're interested. And I think there actually were requests out in the hall for people to indicate if they're interested in maybe serving as a municipal representative, as a gubernatorial appointee, in some cases possibly as an agency appointee. I sometimes say I have a board that only the legislature could have created. It has 138 members on the MAPC Council, and that can be challenging. I have to rent a room whenever they meet, but the great thing is always a certain amount of turnover, so there are always openings, either in any of those categories. The governor appoints 21 or 22 people, I think, to MAPC, and the governor's appointment office is always asking us, do you have ideas about new appointments? So we're going to try and use it for that purpose, see if we can keep some of the consortium members actively involved. The last thing that I want to mention is we are going to create an implementation advisory committee for Metro Future. And we're going to have to continue to work on exactly how that's designed. It won't be like the steering committee that Shirronda chairs that actually had grants to give out, because we don't have a Sustainable Communities grant anymore. But we still need advice and help and pressure every now and then, and good ideas about how we can implement Metro Future. And one of the great things about Sustainable Communities for my agency is it's created thousands of new connections with people that have traditionally been involved on the regional scale, and I want to keep those people involved. I know Amy and Joelle and Michelle and Lynn all want to keep those people involved. So we may be asking you to join that committee and help us in designing those efforts. The last point I want to make is a little bit of a housekeeping point, but it's very important to MAPC, and that is that we've done in my tenure at MAPC a strategic planning process and then a strategic plan update. And once again, it's time to do a new strategic plan for the agency, particularly focusing on these critical issues of what happens after sustainable communities. The Barr Foundation has generously funded this strategic planning effort, and MAPC has hired TDC, who many of you know, Technical Development Corporation, based here in Boston, but really a firm of national reputation, to do this work. And we're pleased to have Hedda Rublin. Hedda, where are you? Right over there, who is one of the 2 prime staff people, Hedda and Liz Curtis, are working on the strategic plan for MAPC, and so she may be buttoning holding you during the reception and just checking with you. So be kind, but make good suggestions, because we're looking for those ideas and for those suggestions. Our strategic plans are really focused on what are the 10 new things we're going to do in the next 5 years, and we want to have those really good ideas to make those choices. I want to close by just giving a heartfelt thanks to all of you, to the members of the consortium, to our partners from universities, from business, from foundations, and from government and elsewhere who came together. To all the municipal leaders who have 100 other things to do at the office every day and still devote part of their time to regionalism. And most of all, to my colleagues and my friends on the MAPC staff who make it fun for me to come into work every day. I don't know if they say that about me, honestly, but to Joelle, to Amy, to all of my directors and all of our staff, we have a brilliant, dynamic, impassioned group of people working at MAPC, and they come up with so many wonderful ideas of things to do. It doesn't have to be the thing we did 6 months ago. I never hear from them, oh, we can't do that because we tried it before. They're always knocking on my door and say, hey, I've got a great new idea. It has nothing to do with what we do. I'd like to do it. And usually, especially if they bring me some money, we are able to do it. So thank you to all of you, and I'm very much looking forward to our future collaboration together.
Thank you so much. So don't get too comfortable. We're going to do this next part together, but I did just want to thank you all for joining us today. This room looks great. We have all these like shining faces and all these projects that are getting ready to be implemented, and now is the best part. Speaking of projects, hopefully people voted. The results are in, and you get to share in this joyous occasion. Yes, you do. As it says on my official envelope here, the people have spoken. So first, our runner-up, and they will receive, and I mentioned this earlier, that Mark is multi-talented. So from the garden of Mark Draisen, lovely flowers I can't even name. And this bouquet goes to the Somerville Managing Neighborhood Change, Jenny Ray and Daniel Winter. Every project has many partners. Congratulations, guys.
So we'll see if this goes to MAPC or if it stays at City Hall or SCC.
Hey, just pick your flowers and, run with it. Thank you, guys. And now, for our first place, I have to say, and I'm not surprised, I actually stole a vote from this person because I was like, they're an organizer, they'll get plenty of votes, vote for mine. It was an unexpected entrant. It was oversized, but excellent. The Quincy Street Corridor Opportunity Zone, Dorchester Bay, Julie Rowe. Like a true organizer, getting it done. Congratulations. So this beautiful basket is from the Idlewild Farm in West Acton, I believe. So enjoy and share with all your partners. So as she's getting her little photo moment here, and it's quite a workout. I'll take that for you. So I just want to remind folks, we're all about engagement. Hashtag MAPC next. You probably can't see this. Hashtag MAPC next. If you have, ideas, if you are going to participate, thoughts on what's happening with your project, how you want to, how to become a gubernatorial representative on the council, you can contact, talk to me, but definitely stay involved. I mean, this is I didn't know what MAPC was when I first joined the council, and it was like, what? They do fire trucks. What? They do Homeland. What? They do Hubway and land. So now that you've been introduced and you're in the inner circle of MAPC, I'd like to encourage folks to really step up. Look at it as a resume builder, a career builder, but really think about how you can be involved. So I will leave you with that and encourage you to please join us in our celebration. This is the most important part of this event. Thank you so much.